Welcome back to the shop, everyone. Today's video takes place in week 10 of 2023. That's March 6th to March 12th. We're going to start off this video by opening up a hugely dented box because it contains my new air conditioning condenser, and I wanted to make sure that there was no issues with it. Fortunately, there were no issues, so we are good to continue where we left off, back on some heater lines. So I got some parts in, so I'm just opening up the box, going through the parts, just figuring out all the stuff that I got. You know, the usual. So I also did a ton of research off camera to figure out where all of the heater lines and hoses go. And on these foxbodies, typically the heater return comes to the passenger side intake where I had the coolant temperature and pressure sensor. So I'm moving that over to the other side. The wiring should work just fine. That shouldn't be any issues. And I'm now going to install the heater core return into the top of the head, or into the top of the intake on the passenger side. So you just saw I pulled out the temperature sensor, moved it over, and then I put that 3/8 NPT to -10 fitting in. And so right now what I'm doing is this Mazira water pump has a little plug in it, and it's got a Allen head bolt. So I'm removing the plug. It is a -8 orb fitting in the water pump, and I'm also going to install a -8 I'm going to install a -8 orb to -10 fitting in there. Oh, actually I'm wrong. That top fitting is a -8 orb to a -6 AN, because that's going to be going up to the thermostat housing bypass. So this bottom fitting is going to be the -8 AN to -8 AN orb fitting to -10 AN up the top, and that's where the heater hose is going to feed from. So yeah, just threw a little 90-degree fitting on the top. I need to try and figure out heater hose placement. So is it going to come, behind the alternator, or is it going to go down the back of the intake and then just kind of hook over? Just trying to figure out the best routing for all of this. When I initially started the build on this car, my main goal was for everything to be clean. I wanted a clean engine bay, I wanted everything hidden. But as I'm building this, I could make everything hidden and, tuck everything away, but then it's just not serviceable, it's hard to get at stuff. So I'm balancing having just a super clean engine bay and actually having everything functional and, having niceties. If I really wanted a clean engine bay, I don't technically need heat or air conditioning, so I could just remove those things and then it wouldn't be in the engine bay. But I want those niceties. I want to have a nice street car. I want to be able to drive it in the winter when it's cold or in the summer when it's hot. I don't want to have fogged up windows or anything like that. So I'm still going to run all those things, but I'm going to run them in a way where it's well thought out and it's clean. It'll still look good, I think. Yeah, so I'm just going to start building some of the heater hoses. You've seen me do this a bunch, so it's nothing new. So what I was just doing there is I was trying to fit the heater hose onto the heater valve, and as it turns out, the -10 hose will not go over that heater hose. So I need to figure something else out, and then we had a little puppy break. We got to see Answer in 47. It's always awesome when they come in the shop. Getting this heater hose threaded on was actually kind of a pain in the ass, but we got it there eventually. Through all my stuff that I bought from Aeroflow, because you can see right there on the firewall, I've got those fittings, and on this side of the firewall, they are AN compatible, but they aren't 37-degree flared fittings. So I bought some adapters that changes those fittings into AN fittings. So I was just finding those adapters and making sure they fit, and putting them in, and then putting on a fitting. So I'm just trying out a few different fittings, seeing which one is going to work and fit the best. As you can see, the hose is going to come off of that shock tower and then kind of angle in. So I think I'd go with something like either a 45 or a 60-degree hose end. And then the heater valve is going to sit between the water pump hose and the heater core. Add some tape to the line, cut it, and build the hose. With that first line on, we are going to start building out this second line. So as I mentioned, we are going to have to make this one shorter because we need the heater valve in the middle. just checking the inside diameter and the outside diameter of these, and just, yeah, I realized there's no way in hell that heater hose is going on there. It's just not going to happen. You know, I kind of thought that I might be able to stretch it out, but the hose end clamps that I bought for the Dash 10 hose will not fit over that barb. No way, no how. So I had previously bought some barb to AN fittings, but I didn't know if they were going to work. You know, I think it's a 3/4 barb to AN. So I throw it on here, and then just with some compressed air, you know, I have my thumb over the other end. I think right now the compressor's at like 70 PSI. And by just throwing air in there, no air bubbles leaked out, and it blew my finger off the other end. So I'm really hoping that these 3/4 barb to AN fittings work and hold. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to figure out something completely different for this heater hose. But we're gonna go with this for now and try it and see how it goes. I'm going to use one of these fittings on both ends of the heater valve, and we're just going to make this hose. Yeah, we're just going to make the hose. So we've got that bottom fitting on the water pump, and now I'm just going to check fitment, make sure that I can get a hose out of there, make sure that I have clearance, make sure it's not, you know, we're going to rub on the alternator, stuff like that. This is the last heater hose that I need to make, at least for this part of the build. Once I get the thermostat housing, I'll have to make another one to go from the thermostat housing down to the water pump. But yeah, so very happy with how this turned out. I just hope it doesn't leak. That's the main concern, of course. So we'll see how those fittings hold up. So yeah, so pulling the ratchet strap off the rad, but before I do anything with that, I'm going to clean up a bit because I need my benches. Alright, so after the little bit of cleanup here, we can actually start getting working on mounting the radiator in the car. So the first thing I want to do is get the rad centered in between the frame rails, and from there I can figure out, you know, the measurements for the parts I'm going to make. Of course, I want to make sure I can take the rad cap off still. That's pretty important going down the road. If something happens, I need to put some water. I need to make sure I can get that rad cap out of there. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the old tube front end, and the reason why I'm using that is because, hey, I have the metal here. So I'm going to put a notch in it. It's going to attach to the tube front end, and then on the other side I'm going to put a piece of flat metal And then I'm going to weld a piece of flat metal onto the radiator, and then I will bolt the two together. Because I don't have a hole saw that's the exact same size as the tube on the front end, I'm just doing a quick fit to make sure that it'll work. If there's a little bit of a gap, I can weld around that, and I think it's going to work just fine. I don't have to do any more modifications, just use it as is. So I'm just going through the steel pile, finding some aluminum to weld to the radiator, and finding some steel that's about the same thickness to weld to that bar. So I'm just measuring out the rad, and I think it's 3 inches or 2.5, something like that, whatever it is. But I decided I'm going to make the pieces of steel and aluminum 5 inches, so that way I've got space on either side. I can put bolts in there. I can do what I got to do. See how this is gonna go. I'm gonna have that welded to the frame. On the right side of that bar, I'll have a little chunk of steel and then a chunk of aluminum on the rad, and then that'll get welded to, the chunk of steel will get welded to the tube, chunk of aluminum get welded to the rad, and then we will drill a hole and bolt it all together. Measuring out, and I'm cutting out the steel pieces, and then I will do the same for the aluminum pieces. Now that I got those pieces all cut up, I'm going to take them over to the belt sander and just get them cleaned up a little bit. So now that I've got the tube cleaned up there, this side's pretty much good to go. I can measure on the other side and start getting that figured out. Or instead, it looks like I'm just going to mark out on the metal where I want the center tube to sit. tap disc on the grinder, and I'm just going to clean up some of the mill scale so that I can weld that tube to this plate. Now I'm just going to take this over to the belt sander and clean up the tube itself. It's a little quicker on the belt sander than it would have been using the grinder. And I suppose before I get started on the other side, I'm going to tack this side together. I guess it kind of makes sense to tack it together, that way I can kind of push the rad all the way over before I start on the other side. Super nice new tool here. It's a mag switch. You're supposed to be able to just put your ground cable onto that, and then you like the magnet just attached to your fab table, or in the case of a steel, you could put the magnet right on the steel piece, so I could put it on the front tube. But of course, the bolt on the mag switch is bigger than the lug that's on the cable, so I can't use that, so I just need to use ground clamp for now, which is fine. I would just really like to use the tool that I bought. That looks like it's going to work just good enough. So I think now I'm actually starting on the other side. Putting that tube in the notcher, going to put a notch in it, and then I will cut it down to the appropriate size, and we will repeat for the second side. now that we have replicated this on the driver's side, we can start center punching some holes and, you know, getting some bolt holes drilled into this. Here is I'm going to set this up in the drill press. I'll clamp it down. I will drill through both pieces using the drill press. That way, you know, everything's all lined up exactly as I want. And then what I'll do is I'll actually put a bolt through the hole that I just made, clamp it down, flip it around, and then I'll drill the hole, or the second hole on the other side, with it clamped together. That way I know for a fact that the original holes are lined up and the new holes will be lined up. Just makes it so much simpler. I don't have to drill holes in both and hope they're lined up. Just drill through them both at once. So as I'm working, I do something really stupid here. You can see there's those shards on the drill press. Well, I decided to grab it with my finger and try and pull it off. Well, it was stuck to the bit and my finger slid down the aluminum and I put a nice, like, I don't know, 3/4, 1 inch gash in my hand. So yeah, I had to stop because it was bleeding. Then threw a band-aid on. So yeah, when you're doing shit like... Alright, so now that everything is drilled out, I'm just going to go over to the belt sander and I'm going to clean up all the edges. I'm going to round the corners and then I'm going to make it so that both the aluminum and the steel are the same shape, because when I cut it, it wasn't 100% perfect. So using the belt sander, I can make it so that they're both the exact same size. So now that I've got both these pieces fabbed up and tacked together, I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to weld it all the way around. So I bought these rubber strips, or this rubber strip from Amazon, because I want to line the bottom of this with rubber, so while the rad's sitting in there, it's not, jarred up against the steel, etc., etc. So I'm just cutting off some chunks and making it so that it fits in the groove. To do a test fit now. I got those cut, and this test fit goes very poorly. The rad does not fit in at all. You can see I'm pushing down on it a fair amount, and it ain't budging. So yeah, it's not gonna work. Trying to figure out why, and eventually I grabbed my calipers, my digital calipers, and I measure the rubber, and this rubber is 1/4 inch thick instead of 1/8 inch thick. I of course ordered 1/8 inch off of Amazon, and they sent me 1/4, and I didn't realize it. So when I built those bottom brackets, I had planned on 1/8 inch rubber. So yeah, that's why that doesn't fit. I still need to mount not mount, but weld that aluminum plate onto the rad. So I'm just kind of getting the steel and the aluminum bolted together and getting it in place as to where it's going to be when this is actually installed. So yeah, you just saw I measured the thickness, and now I'm just double checking the thickness, and yeah, this is 1/4 inch, it's not 1/8 inch, and I specifically ordered 1/8 inch for this. And I'm just so frustrated I didn't notice this before I even cut any of it, but such is life. So nothing else to do, but yeah, I'm just measuring to make sure that they had even sent me the correct length of rubber, and you know they had. So it's fine, we can continue on with what we're doing. So I'm just cleaning up the tubes so that I can weld, so that I can weld the pieces onto the tubes. So we're going to clean it up, and we are going to get those tacked in. So the reason why we can get the steel tacked in is because, you know, the position on that bar isn't going to change. The height of the rad might change a little bit, but yeah, so tacking this in is totally cool. And of course, when I say tacking, I mean fully welding this the entire way around is totally cool. So just going to quickly take off this rad support so I can get a better angle at the weld. And no reason not to weld the other side while we're at it. of course, I'm welding in kind of terrible positions, and I'm not a great TIG welder at the best of conditions, so I dip the tungsten quite a bit, so I'm just grinding tungsten so that I can continue on. So now that I have the steel parts welded together, I'm going to prep the rad to prep the aluminum for weld, and we're going to tack the end pieces onto the rad. Since I'm not a great welder, my initial tack didn't go so well, so I'm just practicing on the aluminum that I have in the back there. I got it to a point where I could tack it, so I was happy enough. Now that it's tacked, I'm going to pull it out of the car, put it on the bench, and I'm going to weld those plates on. Yeah, so with that, the rod's mounted in. It's not going anywhere. Pretty damn happy with the work so far. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start figuring out how to mount the condenser in the car. That's the next big hurdle. So it comes with these like universal brackets, but no instructions. So I'm just gonna have to kind of figure this out on my own. Yeah, before I really start figuring this out, you can see right here, there's just a huge mess. I can't even walk around in the shop. So before I do anything, I'm gonna do some cleanup. So now that cleanup's done, I'm going to put the front end back together. And the reason why I'm doing this is, if you remember in a few videos, probably a while back, I had bought a condenser and it was too large. It was not going to fit in the front end. The front end, or like the nose cone, was not going to go back on properly if I had that condenser on, because it wouldn't fit between the light buckets. So I bought this new condenser. So before I get too carried away mounting anything in, I want to put the front end back together, put the nose cone on, and make sure that condenser will fit and work for what we need. So here you can see, yeah, I can fit this condenser down. I have enough space between the nose cone and the rad. I can space it out a bit. It slides up and down, so if I ever had to pull it out, that shouldn't be a problem. So that condenser will absolutely work what I need for what we need. And yeah, just doing a little bit more confirming, because I don't want to get to installing this and then all of a sudden, oopsie, it's not going to work. So now that I've confirmed that's going to work, let's pull this front end back off so I actually have room to work. We're just going to start figuring out where I want this. Do I want it higher? Do I want a little bit left? Do I want a little bit right? Do I want lower? Yeah, kind of start figuring this out with the universal brackets and how it's going to mount. As I said, there's no instructions, and this is just kind of a universal condenser. So I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to mount that, and I'm still not sure. I'm still trying to figure this out. Yeah, as you can see, I'm just, with the brackets that it came with, I'm trying different angles, just trying to, figure out something kind of logical. Since I really don't know what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to go back to doing some dash wiring. I know what I need to do on the dash, and it can give me a little bit of time to think on how I'm going to mount the stuff, and instead of standing around for another half hour or an hour just thinking about it, screw it, let's just go over to something, get some work done that I know I can get done, and I can think about how I'm gonna mount that when I'm not in the shop. So what we're working on right now is setting up all of the wiring that goes to the dash. There's a fair amount that comes into here. So the wiring coming from the car, let's see here, what do we have? We have a fuel gauge positive minus. We're going to have an e-brake ground coming off the e-brake. We're going to have the shift light. We're going to have a caution light, a warning light. What else do we have? We have the speedometer signal. We've got left turn signal, right turn signal, high beam indicator. What else do we have coming up here? It's a full 12 pin connector of stuff. Just trying to think of what else we have. Yeah, caution, shift. Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, so it's a full 12 pin harness. I'm sorry for this terrible angle. I think I fixed it. But yeah, I'm just kind of going through and figuring out which wires I need where, and how I'm going to pin them and stuff like that. And thanks to this terrible camera angle, you get to see nothing that I'm doing. Although you've seen me pin wires before, so this isn't anything new, but I'm sorry. Hey, that's a bit better what I'm actually working on. Alright, so see what we got going on here. So yeah, I'm just making note of all the different things on this dash that I need to pin up. I got a 12 pin connector, and so I'm just starting to put a few pins in. There are still some things that I need to run to the back of the car. For example, I need to run the fuel sender wire, and I have that in the box there somewhere, I believe. So yeah, I need to run the fuel sender wire, and then there's a wire from the speedo that needs to go. But the wire from the speedo I've actually already run up from the Holley Dominator, so I don't need to use the supplied harness that they brought. So because I'm using the Deutsch connectors, I just clip off the stock connectors that the speedo and the fuel sender have, and I will repin them to Deutsch, so that way I can have everything consistent. I was trying to pull the pins out with the zip tie. It didn't work. Zip tie is not stronger than the little plastic in the connector, so just grabbed another tool on the bench. And the reason why I'm depinning this is I'm actually switching the order of things. So I kind of like to have things in a specific order that are kind of logical to me, so top to bottom, left to right type thing. So I think I'm starting with like all of the lights on the left side of the dash, which will be like the caution, the warning, the shift light, the park brake light. There's a fourth light there. I don't really remember, but yeah, so starting with those, and then, you know, kind of working from the top over, it's going to be like the high beam, low beam, or sorry, the high beam indicator, left turn, right turn, going to the speedo, so the speed sensor signal from the Dominator, and then, you know, fuel plus and minus. I feel like that's it, but I also feel like there's more stuff. Yeah, I need power for the e-brake LED, or power for the LEDs, so I need to run a power up. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on, running all the wires. So I think I'm grabbing the ground and the power for the LED, or the ground for the LEDs, or sorry, the ground for power for the LEDs, and then the ground for, yeah, I'm not sure what the ground's going to be, because I'm triggering all the LEDs with ground from the Dominator, I think. Yeah, so that's everything that I'm working on right now. Well, this bit of wiring is where we're going to leave this episode. As always, if you stuck around this long, I'd like to thank you for viewing, and we will see you in the next one.